Today's unemployment figures show the economy is moving in the right direction. The drop in unemployment is one more sign that the economy is strengthening.
And this is Chris Williamson on his removal from Parliament and regarding his show Palestine Declassified on Press TV.
The Parliament claims to be the home of democracy, the mother of parliaments, and yet here we are, parliamentarians clamping down on free speech. I mean, what have they got to be frightened about? I mean, I host a program about the Palestine struggle for freedom. It'd be interesting to find how many of the people who made the decision are members of the various Friends of Israel groups, which are quite prevalent across Parliament. A vast majority, indeed, of members of Parliament are members of organisations known as either Conservative Friends of Israel or Labour Friends of Israel. So it'd be interesting also to just, I mean, I've not actually been able to find that out yet as to who it was that finally voted and made the decision. I mean, I think clearly the Zionist lobby is very exercised about the fact that the Palestine Declassified show is gaining traction now. I mean, they're doing their very best to suppress the reach of the show, but it is increasing the reach every week. So they have determined to suppress, to actually cancel out any alternative narrative to the one that they want to give to the public. So it seems to me this is very clearly because of the fact that we are exposing the Israeli regime for what it really is.
The Russian president's held a cooperation.
It is obvious to the most simple-minded that Loci is of an inferior breed.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
Are you blind, Commander Spock? Oh, look at me.
I thought you scientists were supposed to keep an open mind.
There's a difference between keeping an open mind and believing something because you want it to be true.
Your friend Spock is a logical man.
I find your arguments strewn with gaping defects in logic.
Most illogical reaction. We demonstrated our superior weapons. They should have fled.
You mean they should have respected us?
Of course.
Mr. Spock, respect is a rational process. Did it ever occur to you they might react emotionally? With anger?
Doctor, I'm not responsible for their unpredictability.
You do not think like the others. There are no colors to your patterns of logic. There's only black and white.
Logical, unemotional, completely pragmatic. And we poor, irrational humans whip them in a fair fight. Now you'll find yourself back among us illogical humans again.
Which I find eminently satisfactory, Doctor. For nowhere am I so desperately needed.
Because she feels. I don't. All I know is logic.
Will you try to understand how we feel about our life here? About each other?
Emotions are alien to me. I'm a scientist.
You're gonna leave here without them? Run off on some wild goose chase halfway across the galaxy just because you found a discrepancy in a hydrogen cloud?
Doctor, I am chasing the captain, Lieutenant Uhura, and Ensign Chekhov, not some wild aquatic fowl.
Mr. Spock, you have a remarkably logical and analytical mind.
Thank you. I prefer the concrete, the graspable, the provable.
You'd make a splendid computer, Mr. Spock.
Smotrich and Gallant agree on defense ministry power sharing. The power sharing crisis between Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and Minister in the Defense Ministry Betzalel Smotrich has come to an end. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Gallant, and Smotrich signed a document of understanding on Thursday regarding the division of responsibility in the Defense Ministry between the Defense Minister and the Additional Minister regarding the civil administration and the coordinator of government activities in the territories. This is pursuant to the coalition agreements and the Knesset decision on the day the government was established. According to Wallah, Smotrich will receive the majority of control over the civil administration, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will sort out the arguments regarding enforcement. Channel 12 reported that the two concluded that the military's freedom of operation would not be affected by the power sharing, and the appointment of officers in the civil administration would continue to be carried out by the IDF Chief of Staff, so that the organizational structure of the coordinator of government activities in the territories and the civil administration will remain as they were. And this from Jewish News Syndicate. Netanyahu, Gallant, and Smotrich reached deal on authority over civil administration. The defense ministry bodies responsible for construction approval and other bureaucratic matters in Area C of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and Finance Minister Betzalel Smotrich on Thursday signed a document of understandings regarding the division of responsibility in the Defense Ministry, in which Smotrich also holds the post of minister. According to a joint statement, the document, which was not made public, outlines respective authorities over the civil administration and the coordinator of government activities in the territories pursuant to the coalition agreements. Last week, Netanyahu reportedly promised Smotrich that he would immediately transfer to him power over the Defense Ministry's civil administration. The move came after Smotrich slammed the civil administration for ordering the razing of Jewish-owned olive grove and orchards in the West Bank. The destruction of the property was carried out on the authority of Gallant, despite orders from Smotrich to freeze the demolition. As a minister in the Defense Ministry, Smotrich has been tasked by Netanyahu with overseeing the civil administration, the ministry body responsible for approving construction and handling other bureaucratic matters in Area C of West Bank. Gallant last month also overruled Smotrich's call to halt the razing of Or Chaim, an outpost commemorating Rabbi Chaim Drukman, the spiritual leader of the religious Zionism movement, who died on December 25th. That decision caused friction between Gallant and Smotrich, who in response had his religious Zionism party boycott the following cabinet meeting. Smotrich last week sent a letter to Netanyahu warning him that further delays in transferring to him full authority of the civil administration in accordance with the coalition agreement could threaten the stability of the government. About a month ago, as minister in the Defense Ministry appointed to oversee the civil administration, I instructed that the order against Hen bin Eliyahu's olive grove and orchard he nullified immediately, wrote Smotrich. But much to my surprise, the Defense Ministry brazenly violated the coalition agreement and overruled my decision. Minister Gallant has decided to continue the left-wing policies of former Minister Benny Gantz, even though the claims against this orchard were proven in court hearings to be false. Smotrich subsequently wrote on Twitter, Minister Gallant's denial of the unequivocal coalition agreement and the Prime Minister's dragging his feet on the matter are unacceptable and will not be allowed to continue. This is a clause that was clearly central to our agreement, and the basis for the existence of a coalition is the existence of coalition agreements. And from Politico, disappointment in Brussels after Israel expels MEP on official visit to Palestine. EU leaders expressed surprise and regret Tuesday after the Israeli government barred a member of the European Parliament from entering the country on official visit and deported her to Spain. Anna Miranda, a Galician MP with the Greens European Free Alliance group, landed at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv Monday evening along with 8 other lawmakers after 2 European Parliament delegations, one for Israel and one for Palestine. On the orders of the Israeli Interior Minister, Miranda was put on a flight to Madrid. It's a diplomatic conflict. It's intolerable that Israel exerts control over members of a delegation that's going to Palestine, not going to Israel, Miranda told Politico. A spokesman for the Israeli mission to the EU said the only reason that she was not allowed to enter is the issue that she tried to enter Israel illegally. This referred to Miranda's participation in a flotilla in 2015 that aimed to break the naval blockade of Gaza by Israel. Israel's recently elected a far-right coalition government led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Miranda said that while being held at the airport for 3 hours, a female border control guard repeatedly told her to shut up, and that when Miranda explained that she was an MEP, the person replied, "What is the European Parliament? It's nothing here." Miranda said she did not hide her participation in the flotilla when questioned. The 4-day visit by MEPs this week will include trips to the Israel-occupied Palestine territories of the West Bank and East Jerusalem, where the Palestine Authority has limited autonomy. The delegation was denied access to Gaza, Miranda said. Parliament President Robert Metsola described her disappointment on Twitter, saying she will contact the Israeli authorities to demand answers and also convene the leaders of the political groups to discuss the next steps. Relations between Jerusalem and the parliament have been cordial as of late, with the institution having hosted Israeli President Isaac Herzog to mark Holocaust Memorial Day in January. Metsola, a Maltese MEP from the center-right European People's Party, visited Israel in May last year. Miranda was given the go-ahead to enter Israel according to emails dated February 2nd and 24th between the EU's External Action Service in Israel and the country's Foreign Affairs Ministry, seen in full by Politico. The email stated that Manu Pineda, a Spanish far-left MEP who chairs the Palestine delegation, was barred entry but made no mention of banning Miranda from entering. Miranda said it was a lie, that she was still banned from entering Israel. Otherwise, they would not have authorized me to travel, she wrote in a follow-up message. The spokesperson for the Israeli mission to the EU said Pineda, who did not travel to Israel with the rest of his delegation, supports Hamas, designated as a terrorist organization in the EU. The EU's General Court has ruled that Hamas should be removed from the list, a decision that's currently suspended, pending an appeal by the Council. Pineda told Politico in a statement, "I'm not a Hamas supporter no matter how much the Israeli regime insists." He continued, the Israel regime can continue to insist on its alibi of photos in Hamas, but in reality, what they're doing today is preventing my work as a chair of the Delegation for Relations with Palestine and preventing the proper functioning of its delegation because of my past as human rights activist in Gaza. Israel is a very serious human rights problem and doesn't want anyone to witness the killings, forced displacements, illegal settlements, and systematic arrests, he added. Pineda's left group has demanded that the parliament take reciprocal measures for Israel. He said these means that no Israeli politician or diplomat should be allowed entry. Respect for all elected MEPs in the European Parliament is essential for good EU-Israel relations, said Nabila Masrali, the European Commission spokesperson for Foreign Affairs. This decision is deeply disappointing, and it's also surprising. And lastly, Palestine launches strike to protest Israel massacre in Nablus. Palestinians across the occupied territories have launched a full-day strike today to protest Israel's military raid, which resulted in 11 deaths and 102 injuries among Palestinians in the occupied West Bank city of Nablus. The Israel's occupation military stormed the city yesterday with armed vehicles murdering 11 Palestinians, including a 16-year-old boy and 72 and 68-year-old men, in addition to wounding 102 others. The strike was called for by the Palestinian political factions, who announced that the protest is also in support of the Palestinian prisoners suffering against repressive measures in Israeli jails. Jordan calls on Israel to immediately stop escalation in Palestine. According to Wafa news agency, the Palestinian factions also encourage protest against the Israeli soldiers at contact points around the occupied territories. Shops and businesses, including banks across Palestine, remain closed, and students remained home after their schools and universities also joined the general strike. Public transportation services are also suspended today. Meanwhile, the Palestinian authorities called for an emergency United Nations Security Council meeting to discuss the massacre against defenseless Palestinian civilians in the occupied territories and to demand international protection. There's been an increase in the number of Israeli raids across the occupied West Bank over the past few months, occupied with violence carried out by illegal settlers who have at times even turned against Israeli forces. So we're going to open the channel here. And remember,